Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Embers of Rebellion. Episode 3. Chapter 21. We have a proposition for you, my father says. Which I don't agree to, John's daughter says, cutting my father off. Ava, you will do as you're told, now sit there and shut up, John snaps at her, his aura rushing over her, and I thought it odd that she wasn't able to resist. She was definitely old enough to take over her father's pack, so why hadn't he handed it down to her yet? Was it the issue with the media? Son, please just take a seat, my father says, and I growl, pulling a chair out and sitting down in it. Now, John and I have been in discussions over the last couple of weeks trying to find a way to put an end to this feud. We think we have come up with a solution that will benefit all of us. Tensions are running high in the city, and we need to show those that reside here we are united, but that won't happen if a war is inevitable. So Ava here is due to take over her father's pack, but with recent issues in the media, it has her pack nervous. This is BT. Ava curses under her breath and shakes her head. My lips tug up at her defiance, and Alpha John glares at her before he speaks. My pack is nervous about my daughter taking over. I wouldn't have to take over if you didn't, Ava. Enough, sit down and shut up. You had caused our family enough disgrace, Alpha John snapped at her, but I will give the girl one thing. She had no issues standing up to her father when she stood up and placed her hands on the table to glare at him. I am not even meant to be in the city, I wasn't the one meant to be Alpha. I should have been across the other side of the country in university by now, but you just had to get rid of Alpha. John stood up and slapped his daughter before she could say more, and I jumped to my feet. A growl tore out of me from witnessing him hitting his daughter. It disgusted me that he could smack his own flesh and blood. Sure, she may be a little wayward, but he shouldn't have hit her. Sit down, you know not to mention that name, John warns her, his tone threatening, and I wondered who he was talking about. Alpha John always kept his family on his territory, rarely letting his daughter off pack territory unless escorted, but once she turned of age, he couldn't exactly stop her. I knew Alpha John's wife was rarely seen, only proving how controlling he was, but if she wasn't supposed to be Alpha, who was? Ava rubs her cheek, and her eyes were filled with tears, but she sits back down. Out of the corner of my eye, I see Dante's jaw clench, and my father nods to Alpha John, which pisses me off that he would condone him hitting his daughter like that. As I was saying, Ava here is supposed to take over the pack. Due to her recent behavior, it is making my pack members nervous, so your father and I have found a way to not only end this feud but also help both packs. I don't understand, I tell him, trying to figure out where he is going with this. My father is suddenly nervous, and I see him loosen his tie. You need a maid to produce an heir. I need someone to help take over the pack. My daughter clearly can't do it on her own and has been troublesome. I need someone that can handle her, keep her in line. What like you just did by beating her, and what the heck do you get out of this? I asked my father. None of this made sense to me, they hated each other. Why would my father be suddenly siding with him? Lucian, my father scolds, but I wasn't about to pretend him hitting her didn't happen or that any of this made sense. I was in, and so was my father, but not once did he ever raise his hand to me and sure wouldn't slap my child like she was a man. His entire hand was outlined on her face despite her almost being healed, and to do that to someone you expect to take over your pack is disgusting. It is no secret that Alpha John needed to retire. He was the oldest Alpha in the city. Ignoring my father, I turned to John. I fail to see how your daughter is to help with that issue. An arrangement, we think you should take Ava as your mate, she can provide a strong pup for you, and I can ensure my pack they are in safe hands. It would also get rid of the negative media, and the city will look reunited, my father tells me. I know you aren't blind to those of our kind that have been going missing of late. We can't be fighting amongst ourselves when we may have an inevitable war coming with the humans, John tells me, shocked at what he just asked of me. Shaking my head, no wonder the girl is so angry, I was outraged that my father would even agree to this. Just think about it, Lucian, this is good for everyone in the city and for both packs. It will end the wars between packs, which benefits both of us. No, now get out of my hotel, I won't hear any more of this nonsense, I tell them, getting up out of my seat. Lucian, just think about it, we still have time for you to decide. No need to make hasty decisions. Nothing will be announced until the Alpha meeting in 2 months. Plenty of time to discuss this some more. We don't need to discuss anything. Ava isn't my mate. I will have children with my mate and my mate only. Thank you for the offer, Alpha John, but I am not interested, I tell him, about to walk out the door. I will give you some time to think about it, Alpha Lucian. The offer still stands, so think carefully. Reputation is everything. Alpha John tells me, his eyes darting to my father, who nods. I couldn't care less about my reputation, I was comfortable with who I am. Once again, however, I am cut off before I can answer, this time by my father. How is the Alpha meeting coming along? Have you picked a location yet? My father says, cutting me off as I was about to tell Alpha John to go and get off my territory. It will be on the neutral territory, now I think it is time you leave, I snap at them, meaning both men. Great, well, send us the details, and in the meantime, you can think about what decision you want to make. It would be good to know for certain by the Alpha meeting so we can make an announcement. There won't be an announcement. Your daughter is not my mate, I tell him, but he ignores me instead of gripping his daughter's arm and tugging her out of the room. I growl at him. Enough, just think about it, Lucian, my father says, watching them leave. The moment they do, I turn on my father. How dare you, you just put me on the spot. You didn't think to ask before making deals with the likes of him, I won't go through with it, and if you try again, I will banish you from the city, I bellow at him. My father takes a step away from me, he has always been trying to control every aspect of my life since I took over, but this wasn't his choice and was way out of line. I had found my mate. I wasn't about to toss her aside for some rivalry. Alpha John's daughter not being good enough to become her pack's alpha was not my issue, but this made things more difficult because now I had to convince Marin to let me mark her before the Alpha meeting. I would accept no one but my mate, but I had no doubt that disagreeing would only be the start of my issues with Alpha John and the Shadow Pack. And I could already tell something was up with my father. He was keeping something from me, so until I knew what it was, I was going to have to make sure he didn't find out about Marin. Chapter 22. Marin. The following day I thought I had made it, I thought I could go the entire day without dealing with mate dramas. Once he realized I was his mate, and after his persistence yesterday, I knew it wouldn't be the last time I would be hearing from him. Lucian didn't seem like the type that was used to being knocked back by a woman. But he had to get used to it. There was no way I would allow my son to be taken from me. Stepping out of my office, I gr0an when I see him walking down the corridor toward me and was going to turn in the opposite direction to escape out the side door and back to the safety of my apartment before having to retrieve my son from preschool. Marin, what? Alpha Lucian, I am busy, I call over my shoulder. He jogs after me. Too busy to speak with your mate, he asks. Yep, definitely too busy for you, I tell him, continuing toward the door that led outside. So you hire liars here because that cleaner just told me you should be going on your lunch break right now and that you aren't busy, Lucian says before gripping my arm. Sparks rushed up my arm and I jerked away from his touch as I turned to face him. Lucian growls at me, and I glare at him. Geez, what is your problem? No need to act repulsed by me, he snaps at my reaction. I never said you repulsed me, but thanks, I will add repulsion to my list of reasons for hating you. I tell him though that was a lie, I didn't hate him. His arrogance and the fact he couldn't remember me irritated me, but hate was too strong of a word. Everything in me was calling me to press against him, to touch him and mark myself with his scent, some primal urge to claim him, but I shoved it down, ignoring it. He had my hormones and brain all muddled when he was near, and I wanted to run from him, not liking the feelings he brought out of me. How I could detest and long for someone simultaneously irritated me. Why do you hate me because of Ashley? He asks, and I scoff before turning away. She means nothing to me, Lucian says when I start to walk away from him. He grips my arm, turning me back to face him, and I growl at him and try to shake his hand off, but his grip only tightens. Keep your hands off me. You have no right to touch me, I snap at him. His eyes change and turn black. His wolf side presses forward at the warning in my voice. He clearly didn't like being challenged by his mate, or was it just my refusal to bow down to him, or maybe he was butthurt that I wasn't tossing myself at him like the rest of the bimbos he usually had hanging off his arm. I bet that was it. He wasn't used to being rejected, and to be dismissed by a rogue must really grind his gears. His following words proved the latter. I have every right to touch what is mine, and you are mine, Marin. Every inch of you is mine, mine to touch, mine to mark, you are mine to claim, and I will claim you. I swallow and try to take a step back when my back hits the wall. Lucian's canines slip from his gums, and he steps closer, pressing me against the wall. I swallow, finding myself caged in against the wall by him. His nose moves along my jaw to my neck. The sharp points of his teeth grazed my skin, and my eyes shut, my breathing becoming unsteady, and I hated my own body's reaction at his closeness. You don't seem so sure now, Marin. You know who you belong to, and you do belong to me, he says, his breath fanning across my neck, and I inhale his addictive scent. My own gums tingle with the urge to mark him, claim him as mine, and I try to fight off the instinct that is infused in us. I felt out of control, my heart rate increased, and my breathing became heavy as his scent wrapped around me. Lucian moves closer, his entire body against mine, and a deep thrum from his chest vibrated against mine as he purred. Yet my body gave in to his calling, the urge to let him take me, overriding common sense, and he used my own instincts against me. She-wolves are unable to resist the call of their mates. The sound called me to give in to my mate on some instinctual level, like a sedative that made my brain suddenly stop working. The thought of him marking me also excited me. Bringing forth feelings for him I thought died long ago, reminding me of the urge to nest when pregnant. Some strange urge or compulsion doing what came naturally but also felt uncontrollable at the same time because it took free will from us. It was all instinct and urges. Do I still repulse you, Marin, because your body says otherwise? He whispers against my skin before grazing my neck where his mark should be with his teeth again. I shiver when I feel his IPS press against my skin before he runs his tongue across my neck. Lucian gr0ans obscenely, his hand schemes under the side of my blouse. I gasp at his touch, and my hands feebly clutch the front of his shirt. I didn't know if I wanted to pull him closer or shove him away, my brain and body fighting with each other. But, did his body feel good pressed against mine, so warm and my skin tingled. The sound of someone clearing their throat makes me jolt back into reality, and I jump while Lucian growls menacingly and I push him away from me instantly, the fog lifting. Though I miss his touch. Looking down the corridor, I see Macy and my cheeks heat, and she raises an eyebrow at me before tapping her fingers on her wrist. My brows furrow, and I quickly glance at my watch. I had to get Valerian from the rogue preschool, it would close soon. I knew I shouldn't have taken such a late lunch. I would typically be waiting at the gate by now, it was nearly 4:30 p.m. Zoe, I ask, and she nods. Already gone to get, she looks at Valerian. She should be back soon, Macy says carefully, letting me know Zoe was grabbing Valerian with Casey, and I let out a breath of relief. Thank you, Macy, I will be down soon. I just need to deal with something first. Sure, go back to whatever you were both doing, but keep it PG, this is a hotel, she chuckles, and I glare at her before my cheeks flame with heat. Lucian smirks at me, and I glare at him while Macy walks off toward the stairs. So, do you still believe you are unaffected by the mate bond? He asks. I say nothing. How could I when he was practically dry humping me against the wall, and I was letting him? I shake my head, turning to follow after Macy. Deny me all you want, Marin, you will give in. You can't resist a mate bond, Lucian calls quite confidently. Little did he know I had been denying my mate bond for years and would continue to. I wouldn't be so sure about that, I can be stubborn, and I can guarantee I won't be pining over you, I retort, trying to escape him as he followed me. I have other ways to make you give in, resist the mate bond, but I bet you would come crawling back if I had this place shut down, he says, and I stop. Excuse me, I snap, spinning around to glare at him. He smiles, and I clench my hands into fists. Don't forget who this city belongs to, fight me all you want, Marin, nothing I like more than a good challenge, but don't say I didn't warn you, because I always win. You will accept the mate bond and me, or? He looks around motioning with his hand at my hotel. I have a lot of influence around here, he says, stepping closer. You can't breach me on anything, Lucian. Your threats are empty. I know everything is legal, no one can fault this place for anything, I tell him. He shrugs, stepping closer. So you won't mind me sending the health and safety inspector around? Nothing to fine you for? He asks, and I fold my arms across my chest. My hotel won't fail anything. Everything is to the book, you won't win, and nothing you do will make me accept this mate bond, nothing, so go home, Alpha Lucian, I tell him before storming away. The height of him to threaten me. I will see you tomorrow, Marin, Lucian calls out, and I growl at him. Taking the steps two at a time and headed to my apartment, knowing Zoe would be back soon with the kids, and I really needed to run to stop some of the anger that was burning at me. Chapter 23. All afternoon I was in a terrible mood. I couldn't concentrate or focus on anything. 2 days in a row, I had seen Lucian, and the bond was buzzing, and I could feel it was making it increasingly difficult to do anything. On top of that, I had his lingering threat and the worry that came with it. He had the power to destroy the hotel we saved, and Valerie gave it to Valerian and me. I felt protective of it, we built this place from its bones and gave it back life. I wasn't about to stand by and let him take from us. Yet I would be powerless against him in a city where rogues meant nothing. It would be a lie if I said I wasn't worried, I was. Macy, Zoe, and I have worked out for years building this place back up. And for him to threaten to destroy it made my blood boil, the question lingering in the back of my mind, would he really destroy this place, harm his own mate's business all because I refused to give in to him? Ah mummy, Valerian's worried voice reaches my ears, and I lift my head to look at him. A shriek leaves my lips when I realize I was burning the grilled cheese, smoke billowing from the grill, and I rush over, ripping the tray out only to forget it was piping hot, and I wasn't wearing oven gloves. My fingers sizzle, and I drop the tray before racing to the sink and quickly turning the tap on to run my hand under the cold water. Casey, don't touch that, I tell her when she leans down from the kitchen table to pick up the hot tray. She sits back up, and Zoe comes racing out with all the commotion. The smoke alarms suddenly start blaring loudly, and she opens the window above the sink before using a tea towel to waft the smoke out the window. Eve! Are you okay? I nod, holding my hand under the cool water. My fingertips blistered while Zoe used the tea towel and picked up the tray, placing it on the stove and discarding the ruined grilled cheese. She then uses the broom to smack the fire alarm, jabbing the button and cutting off its deafening noise. Let me see, Zoe says, looking around me at my burnt hand. It's fine, it will heal, I tell her, and she clicks her tongue. You have been distracted all afternoon. What's going on with you today? I glance at the small dining table in our cramped tiny kitchen. Both kids went back to their drawing and no longer paid attention to us. He came by again today, I tell her, and Zoe sighs before running her fingers through her hair. I knew she worried I would turn out like Valerie. She and Macy had expressed multiple times they wanted me to make another rogue to ensure I didn't die, but other men didn't faze me in the slightest. I was content on my own, and I liked my independence and didn't need a mate to be whole. However, I couldn't deny how the bond has affected me. You need to figure something out. Last night, you couldn't sleep and were pacing all night, and now you're burning yourself. Go for a run. Val always told you to run it off. Seeing him always weakened her. The more you see him, the more fragile you will become, Zoe says before chewing her thumbnail and watching me nervously. Zoe was right, and I remembered every time that Alpha came to visit Valerie, she would be out of it for days, and we would have to force her out of bed. Yet, that couldn't be happening to me. Not yet, surely. Valerie lasted decades before her deterioration got that bad, it killed her. Go, you know you should. When was the last time you even shifted? I shrug, knowing she was right and it had been well and truly over a month. Yet I hated shifting. It was a constant reminder of what had become of me. Each time, my wolf side became smaller and weaker. If I didn't shift, my mental state would start to deteriorate along with my body. When she was still able, Valerie told me that shifting helped ward off the effects of the bond. Gosh, how I missed that woman. She was one of a kind and one of the best women I had the pleasure of ever meeting. She would have been a great grandmother had she gotten the chance to live longer. One thing I will never forgive Alpha Callan for, he killed her, and I just had to make sure his son didn't make history repeat itself. Lucian won't kill me, and he won't get my son, I would make sure of it. Go, you can tell me about it later when the kids are in bed, I nod, looking over at them. Valerian's amber eyes stared down at his paper as he drew his picture, concentrating hard, his tongue poking out the corner. Zoe sets a glass of juice on the table beside him, and he stares at it and his lips purse while his brows furrow as he glares at it before moving it onto the coaster. He then does the same with Casey's. His pencils were all straight in a row, set perfectly and even sharpened to the same length. However, Casey's were in disarray, and I could see his fingers twitch to straighten them for her. Sorry, Valerian, I forgot, Zoe laughs softly before ruffling his thick dark hair. He looked like his father, a spitting image, and I noticed the stares he sometimes got. He already had a particular atmosphere about him, he was an alpha in the making, and I wasn't sure it would remain hidden. One day someone would notice he wasn't like other rogues. He was born from alpha parents. Even though I no longer had an aura, he was strong and dominant. His personality is quite intense for a child. Casey was like any child, though she looked like Zoe, I could see her father in her too. Casey had his dark blonde hair and brown eyes, though her soft facial features and her nose she got from her mother. Eve, go. The kids are fine, Zoe tells me, and I nod. I felt like I was failing my son, I hardly had time, and I hated spending it away from my son when I did. I felt so spread thin, always racing around for the hotel and barely having the energy to function by the afternoon, always working, building our village and his future. I kiss Valerian on the cheek as I walk around the table to grab my sneakers. Can I come? Valerian asks, and my heart thumps at the thought. He loved watching me shift, not realizing how much weaker I was to a regular werewolf. How was he to know when I am the only one he has seen, but lately, the reserve hasn't been safe. A few Forsaken have got into the city, it has been unusual. Though the city's border patrons quickly put them down, it made me nervous about taking him out. Since the last encounter reported, I hadn't been out after a group of rogues was attacked. The packs couldn't care less for rogues, which only made us more nervous. They didn't care but had tightened patrols, it was no good for anyone in the city if they could get in. Another thing I thought odd was the reports of Forsaken wolves going missing. Some that stuck close to the city borders and turned feral had suddenly vanished. Those that kept monitoring them hadn't seen them, and one thing this city was good at was talking. Rumor spread, yet the missing Forsaken wolves are never mentioned in the news. It's like they don't exist, but I know they exist, we have all heard the rumors, yet no warning was ever given to us rogues to steer clear of the reserve. Those living in packs were given alternative options for going on runs and extra patrols. None of those options were offered to us. So when rogues or Forsaken went missing we knew, the rogue community was small, we noticed when one of us went missing, not that the city cared. One of the missing rogues was a cleaner here, she had twin girls, luckily their grandmother took them in, and we have still been paying her wage and would continue to do so, despite her remaining missing. We would continue to help out her mother with the twins, we didn't forget her. All rogues have been on edge, 11 missing in the last year and numerous Forsaken sightings and 3 Forsaken also vanished, it made no sense. The world was going mad, and it scared me. Not today, sweetie, next time I promise, I tell him, and Valerian pouts. None of that, your mother has her reasons, Zoe scolds when he glares at the table and slams his pencil down. All she does is work, Valerian mutters, and my heart twists painfully at his words. I promise next time, it isn't safe right now, I tell him, and he looks at me where I sat on the couch, placing my sneakers on. If it isn't safe, why are you going then? Because I have to, I need to shift, you know that, we have spoken of this before. Sometimes mummy needs to, fine, Valerian says, straightening his pencils before reaching over and doing the same with Casey's. She frowns at his compulsive behavior. You promise next time I can go too? Valerian asks. I sigh and nod my head. I promise, I tell him. Pinky promise, he asks, holding up his little pinky. I chuckle, getting up and capturing his pinky with mine. I pinky promise, I tell him, kissing his cheek. Now behave for Auntie Zoe, and I will be back soon. We can watch that dinosaur movie tonight if you like after dinner, ooh, and I can make caramelized popcorn, Zoe tells the kids, who nod excitedly. Stay away from the fence line, Zoe says, concerned. I look at the clock and nod. 2 hours max, any longer, I send a search party, she replies. I knew she would too. Anxiety amongst us rogues was at an all-time high. Giving one last glance at Valerian, I walk to the front door and hurry down the steps. Turning down the path at the bottom, I head for the back of the large property toward the fence line. The back of the hotel backs onto the reserve. A large hole had been cut in the mesh fence. It made it easier for those working here to sneak into the back of the reserve. The reserve was large and had a wetland off closer to the city's border fences that encircled the entire city. It was also neutral territory, and the only place considered safe for us rogues to shift without causing a disturbance to the packs, which to me made no sense. Shifting is natural to werewolves, yet we were restricted to where we could go because packs didn't want to share any of the safer places to run. We were considered the undeserving, the nuisances of the city. So we got this one place and one place only, and it had to be the most dangerous part of the city that was gifted to us, right on the most extensive stretch of the border fence line that was the weakest and most accessible to gain entry. I planned to steer clear of those fences, we all avoided them, not wanting the unnecessary attention from those on patrol and now not wanting the unwanted attention of any possible forsaken wolves that may be lurking and looking for a way into the city. I was yet to see one and didn't want to, the rumors were enough to make me want to avoid them at all costs. Cannibals, rabid and crazed, the parts of them that once had humanity now gone, forever stuck in their shifted state, forever the monsters humans once painted us to be. Slipping amongst the trees, I look around before pulling my clothes off and tucking them into a hollow log before kneeling. I had been finding it difficult to shift. It took more concentration and was forced. My body no longer agreeing to do as it was told, no longer strong enough to change on demand. It was a battle made harder each time. I shudder when I feel my bones start breaking, the process painful, and it shouldn't be. It was like my first shift all over again, and I curse that I ever met Lucian as I morph into my wolf, hands becoming paws, 2 legs traded for 4. My vision changed in adapting and now I had shifted, all I wanted was rest. I was exhausted already, but I forced myself to run. I ran for about an hour before I could barely move, collapsing on the ground next to my clothes before shifting back and changing into my clothes. Slowly walking back to my apartment, I turned the corner and smacked into a wall that should not have been there. I knew this place like the back of my hand. I was stumbling backward, having bounced off the firm body. A warm hand grips my arm, pulling me back before I land on the pavement. A gasp escapes me when sparks rush up my arm, and his intoxicating scent has me leaning into him involuntarily. I was looking for you, and the cleaner said your apartment was. He looks around before looking up at the stairs and pointing to mine and Zoe's apartment. This one, Lucian says, and I brush his hand away that held my arm, my heart thudding in my chest when I hear the kids playing. Lucian looks up at the apartment. You live with someone? He asks, moving his head to the side. Yes, Zoe and her kids, I tell him, needing him away from my apartment before Valerian realizes I am home and rushes out. Well, are we going to stand here? He asks, and I glance at my apartment. I just want to talk. Please just hear me out, we already spoke, I trailed off, Valerina pulling the curtain back to stare out, and Zoe quickly closes it, her mouth opening and closing like a fish before she pulls Valerian away just as Lucian turns to look up. He waves to Zoe briefly, and she smiles awkwardly. Yeah, fine, but my office, I tell him, walking off to the central part of the hotel before he could argue. Chapter 24. Lucian stared around my office, it used to be Valerie's apartment, but we converted it into office space. I found it challenging to come here before. Memories always brought back heartache, so we revamped it, and now the place didn't haunt me. Yet, seeing Lucian standing here in what used to be her home filled me with sadness. She loved her son, and here he stood unaware that this place, the hotel, used to belong to the woman who had given birth to him. What kind of man would he be if she was given a chance to raise him, I wondered. I watch him for a few seconds, and he stops at the shelving before rearranging it. My brows furrow as I watch him straighten the ornaments, making them line up. It was one thing seeing my son do odd things like that, but a grown man? His movement was strange as he rearranged the books in alphabetical order on the shelf below. However, OCD wasn't a genetic probability, so it had to be a coincidence. Buy best-selling books online. Why are you here? I wasn't expecting you to stop by, I tell him, remembering his threat to come back tomorrow, yet here he stood. I don't need a reason. I own the city, or did you forget? I roll my eyes at him. Typical alpha, thinking the world owes them for us being allowed in their presence. He stops looking around, and I notice the picture of Valerian on my desk and quickly swipe it off, placing it in the drawer just as he turns to face me. My door opens up, and the night secretary walks in. Coffee? Emily asks, her brown eyes sparkling. She was a cheerful woman, though ordinarily shy. Despite that, Emily has lasted the longest on the night shift in the foyer. Her son was 7, and she lived in the rogue commune, working here of a night to provide for her child. However, she makes her coffee from scratch, and it is terrible. She grows the beans herself, and after stopping by her place when I met her and offered her the job, I refused to drink a single cup, always bringing my own. No, this won't take. Yes, please. Lucian cuts me off, and I glare at him. Emily lingers for a second, and I nod to her. Lucian smiles triumphantly when I give in, yet the joke was on him if he thought he would enjoy what she would prepare for him. Now, if only you would give in that easily to the mate bond. Not happening. I don't need or want a mate, I tell him, and he huffs before pulling out the chair on the other side of my desk. He leans back, folding his arms across his chest, and watches me. I fought back a shiver as my eyes roamed over his muscular frame. And why is that? What have you got against me? I am your mate, Marin. There is no escaping me, but why would you want to? I am an alpha. What sort of rogue are you? Most rogues would be begging me to be their mate, he says, and I scoff. Not when you keep coming around. No, there isn't any way of escaping you. Do I need to get the authorities involved? Tell them I have a stalker, tell them what you want. As an alpha, and the most influential one in the city, I have every right to force you to complete the bond, and there is nothing I can't buy my way out of, even if there was an issue. And here I was thinking, I have every right to reject you, I retort. Lucian growls, and the door opens. Emily walks back in, unaware of the argument she walked in on, utterly oblivious to the tension in the room. She places the coffees on my desk quietly while Lucian and I glare at each other. She slips back out, and Lucian grits his teeth before looking around the room. Why would you want to reject your mate? He asks before getting out of his seat. He looks around again. His jaw clenched tight before turning to glare at the mugs on my desk. I roll my eyes, recognizing that look, and decide to test my theory. It can't be genetic, surely, it's not possible. I have my reasons, I tell him. Before opening the drawer under my desk, I pull 2 coasters out that I kept here for when Valerian sometimes came down here. Lucian lets out a breath, and I hand him one. He quickly places his mug on it and retakes his seat. And what reasons are those? He asks like he didn't just have a semi-meltdown over a coaster. What? I ask, looking up at him, distracted by his mere presence. I was not too fond of the way I felt around him. Your reasons? Surely you wouldn't judge someone on just what is in the media. He repeats, snapping me out of my thoughts. Knowing my reasons won't change my decision, nor will it change mine, Lucian growls. Well, great chat, I tell him, getting to my feet when I feel his aura rush over me. Sit down. You won't dismiss me so easily, he says firmly, and I hits the chair hard. Lucian bites the inside of his cheek, and I glare at him. It makes no sense, you should be able to resist me, yet you put up no fight at all, he says, moving his to the side and staring at me. I am rogue, yes, but also my mate. You should have some kind of resistance to me, he says, more to himself than me. He was pondering his words. I add nothing. I have no resistance because my wolf is weak, thanks to the man sitting across from me. I have been nice, Marin, you do, and I will hate you forever, I sneer at him, and he pulls back. Do what? He asks. You know what, you keep telling me you have every right, you make me, and I will make you regret it. Lucian reaches for his coffee, and I stifle a laugh by biting down on my tongue as I stare at the mug in his hand. He wants to act like an annoying, he can drink it then. Maybe I should tell him, but I shove that thought away quickly as I stare back at the alpha, who seems to think he is God's gift to women. I may have the right to force you, that doesn't mean I agree with it or will do it. I am not a monster, but I also won't wait around forever. A man of my status doesn't get to wait for a rogue to make up her mind, he says before taking a sip. His cheeks puff out, and he gags, covering his mouth with his hand until he retches again before spitting it back into the cup. My God, what is that? It tastes ghastly, he says. I chuckle at the look on his face, and he raises an eyebrow at me. Do you give that crap to your guests? I laugh and glance at my untouched cup. Another fit of giggles leaves me. Definitely not, it's reserved for alphas only, I snorted, choking on my laugh. Lucian stares at my full mug. What? She grows the beans herself, well, she isn't a green thumb, tasted, no amount of sugar would make that taste decent, he huffs before shuddering. I was in fits of giggles while he continued to stare at me like I was deranged. What's so funny? She fertilizes the plant with her own waste. I clutch my stomach at the look on his horrified face. She does what? He says, outraged, getting to his feet. You're lying. You better be lying, Marin. I shake my head and bite my lips to stop myself from laughing. Next time I refuse the coffee trust, I have my reasons. No one loves coffee more than me, I tell him. Lucian pales slightly, and I suddenly feel bad for letting him drink it. He'll get over it. Everyone was aware never to drink Emily's coffee or anything she brought from home, for that matter. Sweet woman, but she can be strange and believes everything is recyclable. Come on then, I tell him, getting to my feet. I can't believe you let me drink that, he snaps, following me out of my office to the small kitchenette. How was the coffee? Emily asks on the way past. Lucian enjoyed it, I tell her, and he growls behind me, only loud enough for me to hear. Emily beams brightly like she just received the best compliment. I grow the beans myself, she says proudly. Lucian's hands clench at his sides, and he nods stiffly, giving her a smile that looks pained. I nudge him toward the small hall and into the kitchenette. Lucian closes the door behind him. If you are going to feed me more, I am not interested, he says before spotting the sink and rushing over to it. He rinses his mouth at the tap before drying his hands on a tea towel. Rummaging through the small fridge, I grab out 2 sodas. Not made from anyone's waste, is it? He snaps at me. No, I tell him, cracking mine and taking a sip. Lucian does the same, drinking half the can in one go before looking around, and I roll my eyes, reaching beside him at his head for a coaster. His hand moves to my hip, and I glare at him, but he smirks back at me. Hands off, I spit at him, only for him to pull me closer just as I grab the coasters from the shelf. Chapter 25. Why? I am only touching what belongs to me. If I want to touch you, I will, and no one would dare to stop me, Marin. Remember that, he growls before tugging me against his chest. I push off his chest with my hand, trying to escape him. Lucian, let me go, and if I don't want to? I will make you, I growl back at him, though I doubted that. However, usually a knee was enough to drop any man. Lucian laughs softly, his hand moving lower before he grabs me. I glare at him before thumping his hard chest with my fist clutching the coasters. He laughs, plucking them from my fingers, and his brows furrow. He reluctantly lets me go. I move to the other side, so I am out of reach. He clicks his tongue holding up a coaster, and he raises an eyebrow at me. What? I ask. Nothing, but that is the second time you have done that, like you knew what I was thinking, he says. Nope, I just know my son, and it seems they share a few odd similarities. I shrug. One of the kids of one of the rogues has OCD. I saw you rearrange my shelf, observant, but I don't have OCD, just certain things bother me, coasters are one of them. Your reluctance to be my mate is another, he then mutters something under his breath, too low for me to hear while shaking his head. And I sigh, sipping my soda. His scent filled the small room, yet I found it oddly calming. However, the quiet was beginning to get awkward as we stood there staring at each other, making me question why he came back here tonight. Did the bond pull him back here, or was he here for more sinister reasons? You didn't come here because you wanted to talk, I state. Not exactly, I raise an eyebrow at him. I was going to mark you, he states before wiping a hand down his face, and he sighs while I step back, my lower back hitting the bench. I won't, I want to, but I won't, not yet. At least we still have time for you to come around to the decision on your own, and if I don't let you, you can't just ignore a mate bond and don't think about rejecting me, Marin, or you will force my hand. I won't have a choice if you do. Everyone has a choice, Lucian. Not everyone, I don't. My father is pushing me to marry and provide an heir. My stomach twists at his words, thinking of Valerian. If you can't, what will he do? He groans, his eyes darkening and his aura slips out before he stifles it. You need to let me mark you. I won't be married off and forced to mate someone that is not my mate. You're an alpha, he can't force you to do anything, and I won't be forced to accept you. I have responsibilities to my pack, Marin. My father is going to announce it at the next alpha meeting. Well, I hope you and your future mate are happy together, I tell him, placing my empty soda in the bin. How can you say that? What is your issue with me? My issue with you is that you're exactly like every other alpha, only giving a FK about titles and pack business, thinking you can go around ordering those beneath you. I don't give a D** and about titles, you're a rogue. If I cared about titles, I would have rejected you by now. Most alphas would have. You should be grateful I want you, others wouldn't given your status. So you admit it then, Titles matter because you just admitted to needing to mark me out of obligation to your pack like I am some breeding machine made for you to provide an heir, all because your father told you to. Lucian growls at me, taking a step closer. You don't know my father, so don't speak of him that way. He founded this city, have you no respect? And as for an heir, that is exactly what you were created for. You were fated to me, and therefore belong to me, Marin. You are lucky my father stopped the rogues being tossed from the city and made forsaken. You should be thanking him, not cursing him out. And at what cost? Whose lives did he destroy to make sure he got where he is? The only thing alphas care about is reputation and how much land they own, while rest of us are cast away and forgotten about. Thank him, he is half the issue with this city he created. Oh, for the love of God, I didn't make you a stragi. My father isn't responsible for what other packs do. Rogues make the choices that get themselves banished from their packs. I am not responsible for their actions, or yours, so you believe every rogue decided they wanted to raise their babies alone with no mates or pack support, have their children forced into crappy schools because they can't attend pack ones, work for less than minimum wage while struggling not to be picked off by the forsaken or hunters, forever blamed because they did the one thing all you egotistical men did, they had a child and you all shun them for it. It takes two people to have a baby, Lucian, yet only the woman is punished for it, so you're telling me you are a rogue? That's how you became a rogue. You weren't born one. I won't raise another person's kid because you wanted to screw around, he says with a growl. I scoff. This is precisely what I meant. He still shared the same beliefs as his father. The title is all that matters. I am not a rogue, but it shouldn't matter if I were. This entire place is run by Rogue Lucian. Not like we tried to keep it a secret, I tell him. Technically I wasn't lying. I wasn't a rogue. My mate fathered my son, and I just couldn't let him know about it. So this about your friend you live with then? What? No, I pinch my brow, letting out a breath. How does he not get it? I click my tongue, annoyed. I am offering for you to be part of my pack. You should be happy to have me as your mate. You won't have to be rogue anymore, isn't that what you want? Don't you want to be in a position of power and not slumming it here with Rogue? Lucian asks. I wanted so many things, and not one of them could he give me. I wanted Valerie back, my family back. I wanted the rogues to feel safe in the city they lived in. I wanted to be able to walk down the street without being glared at and have people move away from me like I would steal their mates. I wanted the pack's views of us to be better, but most of all, I wanted the packs accountable for the anguish they have caused us. We were the same, only declared different because of who our parents are or because of who we shared our beds with, punished for nothing, shamed for making our own choices, choices that took two people to make. I want you to leave is what I want, I tell him before walking out before I slap him. You will regret this, Marin, you will come running back, you'll see, you will beg me to mark you. I don't acknowledge his words. Instead, I am angry that he was blinded by what was happening in his city, the city his father helped build. The following day, I was helping organize a function when a man with a clipboard approached me with Macy. I recognized him quickly, and he looked around nervously. Jim, long time no see, what brings you in here? I ask, looking at the man that caused us while trying to get this place in order. The health and safety inspector taps his notepad. We have had a call come in with a few complaints. I am just here to check a few things. I fold my arms across my chest and raise an eyebrow at him. This complaint didn't happen to come from Alpha Lucian, did it? I ask, and he clears his throat. Uncomfortable with my question, he sighs, looking down at his clipboard. I am not at liberty to say, he says when Zoe suddenly comes rushing through the doors, waving both her arms, trying to get my attention. She slows, spotting the inspector before stopping beside me and leaning close to whisper in my ear. "There is a tow truck towing your car, what?" I shriek, walking quickly through the gardens and stalking around the front to the car park. Chapter 26. Lucian Marin thought she could just dismiss me and I would let her. She was wrong. I get what I want, and I want Marin. I refuse to be mated to some girl out of responsibility when I had a perfectly good but unwilling mate. My father would choke on his spit if he knew she was rogue, but I didn't care. If she is my bond, then I trusted the moon goddess, she would not give me faulty one, Marin would be mine. I would make sure of that. Everyone has a breaking point, and I will find hers. I sat across the road with a smug look on my face, eager to see the look on hers, and I watched the tow truck pull up that I organized this morning. I already sent the health and safety inspector in and could see his car in the parking lot from where I stood. Her truck was just an added annoyance. The beeping of the reversing truck instantly alerts staff something is going on, and I see Zoe Marin's little friend rush out when she notices it backing up to the truck with the hotel's logo on it. Marin believes she can ignore the mate bond. Well, I will make sure she sees me every turn she makes. Zoe waves her arms frantically at the driver. One of my men, Dwayne, ignores her as he backs up. The burly-looking man steps out of the cab and stops next to her, looking down at Zoe. I could just make out her telling him to leave, that he was on private property. "No can do, love, this car has been ordered to be impounded for defects," he tells her, and I get out leaning on the hood of my car. The tow truck driver, spotting me, gives me a thumbs up, and I nod for him to continue, and he starts hooking the old thing up. It didn't take long before Zoe returned with a frustrated Marin in tow. She shoves the man as he starts hoisting her car onto the bed of his truck. Dwayne looked at her shocked, and honestly, so was I. Not that she moved him. Dwayne remained precisely where he was, and she may as well have been a child pushing on a brick wall as she stood beside him. Marin tries to snatch the controller from his hand, but he was holding it too high for her to reach. I found the pure rage on her face funny, and I couldn't help but laugh, and that is how she spots me. Her grey-blue eyes pin me where I stand before her lips press into a line and her hands ball into fists. She storms over to me in a raging fit, and I fold my arms across my chest just before she stops in front me. I found her pint-size rage entertaining. Her tiny body was no threat to me. Marin barely came up to my chin and had to turn her face up to look up at me. I smirk back at her, her eyes practically spitting fireballs at me. Good thing she isn't a witch. She definitely would have cursed me with the look she gave me. She could ignore me all she wants, but Marin can't overlook NY influence in this city. She will give in. "What are you doing?" she demands, poking me in the chest with her finger. I snatch her hand, holding it in mine, and she tries to rip it free. Her strength is nothing compared to mine, and something about that bothered me. What if someone grabbed her who wasn't me? It was clear she would never be able to fight them off. She growls at me, and I realize how non-existent her aura is, like she didn't have one. Rogues had auras too, weaker and nothing in comparison to a pack wolf, but she had none, her growl meek, and if it wasn't for the look of anger on her face, it might as well have been a purr. "Let go, and make him stop, let me mark you, and I will," I tell her, and she snarls at me, her canines slipping from her gums. "Go for it, bite away, I don't care if you want to mark me first. Either way, you will be mine, you are infuriating, this won't win you any brownie points," Marin snarls, and I tug her closer before spinning and pressing her against the hood of my car. Her breathing becomes harder as I press closer to her. God, her body feels good pressed against mine, her scent making my mouth water, and I fight the urge to push my face into her neck, losing the battle completely when I do, but she gasps and I feel her pulse beating against my lips. Marin's hand still clutched in mine loosens, and her body goes slack against me when I press closer to her. Her breathing intensifies as I run my nose along the column of her throat to her ear. So warm and enticing. Her heart is pounding in her chest when I feel her other hand grip the front of my shirt feebly. I could tell she was trying to fight off the effects of the bond, telling her to give in. Telling her to give herself to me, to an alpha. The vibration of my purr rattles my chest, and before I could stop myself, I ran my tongue across her neck. I groaned at the taste of her skin on the tip of my tongue. She tasted better than her scent, and I wanted to devour her. However, the action seems to snap her back, and she tries to shove me off, fighting against me. I pull back to look at her, only for her palm to connect with my face. My cheek stings from her slap, and if looks could kill, I would be reduced to dust. Get off me, you brute, I rub my cheek with my hand. Her slap made my skin tingle and burn, but I don't move away from her. Instead, looking over my shoulder to see the tow truck leaving with her vehicle on the back. Well, seems like you need a lift to the impound yard. She growls at me, and I purr back at her before she starts smacking my chest and I raise an eyebrow at her. She makes a noise of frustration before glaring at me and fixing her hair, putting herself back together like she didn't just chuck a hissy fit in public. I swear, Lucian, you will regret doing that. Tell him to bring it back now. That truck has sentimental value. It was given to me by someone I cared about. Now ring him, and undo it, seeing the effect I have on her. She feels the bond. She could deny me all she wants, but she can't deny the mate bond. Not until you agree to be mine. If you want it back, all it takes is one little mark to sit right here. My finger stops where her shoulder meets her neck and my gums tingle. I desperately want to mark her as mine, craving for her skin to break under the pressure of my teeth when I give her my mark that would forever lay on her skin, telling the world she is mine. Lucian, please, she asks, and I look down at her, her face turned, watching the tow truck move down the street, taking away her truck. It's just a truck, Marin. If you want it back, you know what you have to do. Her jaw clenches, and she turns to look back at me. My stomach sinks when I see her eyes teary like she was fighting the urge to cry. It was just a truck and an old one at that. It wasn't even new. Why she would get so emotional over that old thing was beyond me. You have no right, she snarls. Maybe you forget who I am. I have every right. I own this city, and I say what happens in it, Marin. The sooner you realize that the better it will be for you. I could give you everything you ever wanted, not everything, Lucian. You can't give me the last 5 years of my life back, she says, shoving me away, and I let her. If you haven't figured it out yet, Lucian, I don't care for your social status or your money. I make my own. I don't need yours, and I certainly don't want it. I can make your life miserable, Marin. Marin laughs, which startles me. A threat from the Blood Alpha isn't to be taken lightly. She knows I am capable of destroying her and those that work for her. I could have her hotel torn to the ground, and no one would bat an eyelash at what I did, especially for some rogue girl. Do your worst, Lucian. Don't forget my reputation as a rogue is minuscule compared to the reputation you have. Who do you think will suffer more when it's tarnished? Certainly not me. They already think I am the lowest scum to reside in this city. Yet they still walk through those doors. They still visit my hotel. Miserable, You don't know the meaning of the word, but you will. I will make sure of it, Marin says before turning on her heel about to cross the road. My phone rings, and she glances at me as I pull it out to see the towing company name pop up on the screen. This would be about your car, I tell her, and she turns to face me, folding her arms across my chest. I answer it, putting it on speakerphone so she can hear. Alpha, Dwayne states. Am I bringing it back? Should I take it back to the yard? That is up to Marin, I tell him, raising an eyebrow at her, wanting an answer. She glares at me. What will it be, Marin? Go yourself, Alpha, she sneers. Dwayne whistles at her tone. Wow, so what would you like me to do? Crush it, I tell him, not taking my eyes from her. She takes a step toward me, and her hands clench before she closes her eyes tightly, breathing deeply. Alpha? Dwayne asks. I said crush it, take it to the scrapyard and make sure it isn't salvageable, I tell him. Her eyes snap open, and I raise an eyebrow at her. Marin's eyes filled with unshed tears, and she shakes her head, and I hang up my phone. Could have been avoided, I tell her. Yeah, if only I never met you, all of this could have been avoided, she spits at me before turning on her heel and darting across the road. I notice Zoe and Macy waiting out the front for her, and she shakes her head when Macy reaches for her, swatting their hands away before chasing after her. I start driving off, heading home to plan my next move since this one was unsuccessful. I would have to think of another way, she would give in, it is only a matter of time. I was halfway home, yet my thoughts kept going back to her. I needed to look into her background, find out more about her, but I didn't know her last name, it should be on the hotel's information. Might explain why she was so difficult and why she would be so upset by a car? I also want to know what she did to become a rogue since she wasn't a rogue. I couldn't forget the way her lip trembled when I said to crush her car, I felt like an. It made no sense, she had enough money to buy another one, she owns a SHT hotel, for goodness sake. No way in hell would I be caught dead in that old piece of junk. She should be thanking me for removing it, now she has reason to buy another when I suddenly blanch. Her car, I dart off to the side of the road. Pulling my phone out of my pocket, I quickly ring Dwayne back. Hello, where are you? Next door at the scrapyard, doing what you asked, don't let them crush it, what? Please tell me they haven't crushed it yet, oh he says, and I hear banging around in his truck and the sound of a door being slammed before hearing Dwayne hollering and yelling for them to stop. My heart pounded in my chest while I waited, praying it wasn't destroyed. I heard more banging before heavy breathing could be heard, and Dwayne sounded like he had just run a marathon. He was a big guy, and he sounded puffed out as he grabbed the phone. Yush, that was close. Good thing you rang another second, and it would have been crushed into a can. I let out a breath of relief while he tried to catch his, breathing heavily into the phone. What do you want me to do with it? He asks, sounding more normal. Put it in my garage out of sight, cover it over. I don't want my father seeing it if he stops over, Ratio, Dwayne answers, and I go to hang up when I hear his voice again. Hey, boss, yeah, what is it? She is your maid, isn't she? I haven't seen you try this hard to get a girl in a while, figured she must be special if you are trying to make her chase after you, Dwayne says. Keep it between us, I don't need my father knowing for now, yet, we all know he hates rogues, but by the look on her face when she spotted you, she hates alphas more. I ponder his words for a second. Oh, and you might want to have patrols set up around her perimeter, Forsaken have been spotted multiple times the last couple of weeks, that hotel backs onto the reserve, not a safe place right now, Your dad pulled all the patrols away to focus on the pack's perimeters only, I growl. He had no authority to do that. Only alphas did, and he no longer held the title. Thanks, I will handle it, I will get Dante onto it straight away. Chapter 27. Marin, tears of frustration streaked down my face as I stormed away from him. Zoe and Macy were waiting, but I was too upset to speak to them as I ran to my office. Both of them followed me inside, and Macy was clutching a piece of paper in her hand. You okay? Macy asks, and I nod. However, I was anything but okay. That was Valerie's car. I know it was silly, but it was hers, just like everything of hers I kept down in the storage lockers. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. We will get it back, Zoe offers, and I shake my head. He had it crushed when I refused to let him mark me. I'm sorry, Marin, Macy says, and I sniffle, it wasn't their fault. Macy clears her throat, and I glance at her resting on the edge of my desk as I used a tissue to wipe away my childish tears. Buying another was no issue, but I loved that car because it was hers. The inspector, crap, I forgot, I tell them, getting up, and Macy waves me away, holding a piece of paper out to me. I take it from her and read it. A sound of annoyance leaves me when I see what is written on it. This is bull, they are too standard. He checked last time, Macy nods. He said he will be back in a week to check the guardrails are fixed. And the fence around the pool had been replaced. Anything else? I ask, and Zoe chews her lip nervously. He said whatever you have done to piss off the alpha you need to fix, that he has been asked to find any fault to shut us down unless you give Lucian what he wants. You didn't tell him? Of course not, I nod in relief. I'll handle this, then I will come and grab the kids from school with you, I tell Zoe, who nods. Also, one of the fridges is down, I have sent for an electrician, Macy adds as they are leaving. This day couldn't get any worse. However, I spoke too soon. No electrician would come out, not even a handyman. I went through my contact list of rogues with different trades looking for anyone with any skills with appliances or electricals but found none. Zoe's daughter's father was away from the city visiting his mate's family, so we couldn't ask for his help either. Family vacation packages. When it was time to pick up the kids, Zoe met me by her car at the hotel's front. Any luck? No, I groan. We'll figure it out, we still have one running, and we could bring one down from one of the apartments. We will have to bring two down, one won't be big enough, and that means two apartments won't be available until I order a new one. If I can request a new one, I have a strange feeling we will be struggling to get it delivered. The following day, another Forsaken was spotted last night. A few people staying at the hotel decided not to risk it and left knowing the hotel was a good entry into the city. Regardless, it was Saturday, and we were waiting for the food delivery to arrive for the wedding being held this afternoon. Like I thought, I couldn't get a delivery truck with the new fridge in time. We had a week's wait, and it took 6 of us to haul 2 of the fridges down from the apartments out back that ran next to the functions room. Thankfully the Forsaken sightings had scared off a few guests, giving us extra spaces in the hotel itself to make up being down 2 apartments which were reserved for the wedding guests. I glance at my watch. The food delivery should have come into the city an hour ago. What's wrong, Mummy? Valerian asks as I paced frantically out in the loading dock for the delivery to arrive. Just waiting for a supplies truck, sweetie. What are you doing? I ask, stopping and staring at him. He had his hand propped up on his chin while he stared down at a sheet of paper. He had asked for some photos earlier, and I had given him my photo album to pick some out. He had been quietly working on some school project in the delivery shed, which is out the back of the kitchen. He was so patient. Casey had trouble sitting still for long, yet Valerian had been out here an hour and had no complaints while we waited for the severely late truck. "Do you have any pictures of my dad?" he asked and froze, going over to see what he was looking at. No, I don't think I do," I tell him, brushing his hair back and glancing at what he was working on. "This for school?" I ask him, and he nods. It was a family tree. "Casey has pictures of her dad, why haven't you got any pictures of mine?" he asks. I chew the inside of my lip. There were small cut-out pictures, and Valerie was at the top, the space next to her empty. I tried to be as honest as I could. He knew Valerie was his father's mother and grandmother. The area beside her was empty because I couldn't risk having him mention his grandfather's name at school. The following line was a picture of me along with a spare that was blank. Coming off my picture were some lines where he had glued cut-out pictures of Macy and Zoe. "You put them in our family tree?" I smile. "Yes, they are my aunties, Casey and Taylor, my cousins, our little village," Valerian states. "That's right, our little village, our family," I tell him. He stares at the blank spots on the page. "You really don't have a photo of him?" I shake my head, wishing I could give him one. I could possibly get one off the internet, but the teachers at school would recognize him instantly. "What about your parents and my grandpa?" he asks, pointing to the other vacant spots. Again something I couldn't give him, and it made me feel guilty. They were too recognizable, and I had my name changed before he was born. My father removed all traces of me, and I used my grandmother's maiden name, Summers. That was the only piece I had left of my family in a life I no longer had. "I will check," I tell him, and he smiles brightly. "What were they like?" "My parents?" He nods. "You never talk about them." I think of what I can tell him. I dreaded these sorts of questions. The information I could give him was limited. "Well, my mum looked a lot like me. I have her facial features but my dad's eyes and his dark hair." "My dad?" I pause for a second. "When I was little, I used to think he was a superhero. He liked to play and would always play with my sister and me after he finished work." "You have a sister too?" "A real one?" he asks, and I nod sadly. "She used to be my best friend. What happened to them?" "Can I meet them?" he asks. "Maybe one day," I tell him, though whether that day would come is unforeseeable. My phone starts ringing, and Valerian turns back to his work. Glancing at the screen, I see the delivery truck I was waiting on. "You're late," I answered. "Yes, and it is out of my hands. I have been stopped at the city entrance," I tried to explain, "and I had to wait for some alpha to get here. They have been searching the truck and only just gave my phone back." The man tells me, and I sigh. "Everything still cold?" I ask. "Yes, the delivery is fine, but that alpha I was telling you about wants to speak with you." "Which one?" "Alpha Lucian, he said his name was. I'm not too familiar with your kind or their politics, but he asked a bit about you, asked if I was a secret lover. He seems quite intense," he says nervously before clearing his throat. "I will chuck him on, Marin. It seems you have found yourself in another predicament." Lucian chuckles. "Stop messing around, I need that truck." "I have a wedding in 5 hours, well, then seems like you will want to negotiate then. I am not letting you mark me," I snap at him, forgetting Valerian was sitting behind me. I glance over my shoulder and meet his questioning gaze before sighing. "What do you want?" before quickly adding. "Anything but let me hold the alpha meeting at your hotel," he says, cutting me off. "Definitely not," I tell him. "That's my offer, what have you got to lose? It brings more business to your hotel and will get you media coverage for the hotel, Lucian says, and I roll my eyes. That was the last thing I wanted. However, that was not the issue. It would be risking Lucian finding out who my father is, which would also mean confronting my father. So, am I sending the truck back where it came from? I need an answer. You have a lot of seafood in this truck, be a shame for it to go to waste. I press my lips together. Fine, what date? I spit through gritted teeth. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad, and this could be a chance for Valerian to meet my sister and mother. Or it could go exactly how I am thinking, and I end up humiliated, or my son is denied, or it goes smoothly. Yeah, right, talk about wishful thinking. Any date in 3 weeks, you can pick the date, but it has to be 3 weeks max, Lucian tells me. And my delivery. Then another thought came to me suddenly. Oh, and the restaurant fridge blew up, so if you want the alpha meeting held at my hotel, I need a new fridge delivered in the next hour. Think you can manage that? It will be there in 20 minutes along with a fridge. I am trusting you not to go back on your word, and I advise you don't. I will text you the numbers, and you can send me the cost and details along with the date. I am not giving you my number, just send it to the hotel email address, and I email it back through. You don't have to give it to me, love. Your delivery driver has it written right here on your invoice. Talk soon, he says before hanging up the phone. I never should have put my mobile on the company's info. SHT. Now I had to think fast about what to do about the entire alpha meeting issue. On the plus side, the truck is on its way, and a fridge. I will count it as a win for now. Chapter 28. The wedding went off without a hitch. I was just settling behind my desk, getting ready to finish up for the day, leaving the night manager to handle the end of the wedding. I was about to log out when my phone vibrated. Lucian, still waiting for that invoice? I planned on ignoring him and dealing with it tomorrow, but his next text message had me scrambling for my email. Lucian, do I need to stop over and deal with it personally, force you to submit and make the booking? Maybe I may mark you too. Ivy, sending it through now and the booking confirmation. I quickly reply, going through the calendar to find a suitable date. I added it to the schedule when an idea hit me. If it costs too much, he would surely decline. Writing up the invoice. I sent it through to his work email, which he texted through earlier in the day. I chuckle to myself when my phone starts vibrating on my desk. I stifle my laugh and pick it up. $50,000. Lucian exclaims. I pull the phone away, so he doesn't hear me laughing before composing myself. That extra half-star rating costs a lot, you wouldn't know, you only have what is it? 4 stars. I tell him, having a dig at the fact my hotel's rating was currently half a star higher than his. It is outrageous. What are you serving that it will cost that much? He asks. Oh, you know, the finest finger food, fairy bread, with premium sprinkles, frankfurts and tomato sauce, the good stuff reserved specifically for the blood alpha. If I am feeling generous, I may add in a pass the parcel and goodie bags, but as I am sure Ashley will do a fine job, I would rather skip on any STDs, I tell him. Lucian growls. I don't have any STDs. You think this will turn me away? He snaps. I am hoping so. No chance. Fine, you want to serve all the alphas in the city, kids party food, go for it. Check your bank in the morning, the money will be there. Oh, and Marin? Yes, Alpha, I say, bored and wanting to go to bed. I will be seeing you real soon, and if I am paying this much it wanna come with a happy ending from you personally. He laughs and hangs up. I wonder what he means. I hadn't even gotten back to my apartment when my bank notified me that a payment was placed into the hotel's bank account. That was fast, I groaned as I opened it and saw it was definitely from Lucian. SHT, I mutter. I was so sure he would refuse. Not only was he officially holding the alpha meeting here, but he had also paid in full, and I now had to host for 4 packs. The girls are going to kill me. The last thing rogues want is to be spoken down to by social elites all night, and the catering team will be fuming when they see we are not hosting for 1 alpha but 4 plus a few neighboring city alphas. I could bribe them with a bonus, maybe? Stepping inside, Zoe was watching TV, yawning. She looks back at me over the couch. Oh no, what happened? We may be hosting the alpha meeting. Well, we are hosting the alpha meeting, Zoe sighs. This is what you didn't want to tell Macy and I when we asked how you got the delivery truck and a fridge in. I nod, chewing my lip nervously. Charge him double, that will send him packing. I charged him 50,000, Zoe laughs. That'll definitely send him elsewhere, she laughs, but I don't. No, he didn't, I shrugged, pressing my lips in a line grimly. That son of lovely lady, Zoe corrects. What do we do about the kids, Valerian and Casey? Both their fathers will be there, and if Micah is here, guaranteed he will bring his mate, Zoe says, chewing her lip worriedly. Micah was Casey's father, and he still hadn't told his mate he had an illegitimate child, which worried Zoe because his mate Anna was struggling with fertility. Maybe we can ask Macy's mum, it's not for 3 weeks. We have time to figure out something, it is what it is, Zoe says with a shrug. What about your father? She asks. He will probably just ignore me, I would say. I haven't seen him since the hardware store years ago, maybe he might be over it, want to reconnect? Maybe I don't though, he tossed me away, although Valerian asked me about my family today, also asked about Lucian, I tell her. What did you say? I saw the family tree thing. Casey brought one home too, Valerian added you, Macy, and the girls on it, I smile. Better have. I am the best auntie anyone could ask for, Zoe states, and I chuckle. Did they go down easy tonight? Casey had a tummy ache, but Valerian went down easily. He asked when you would be home, and he was digging around in your room earlier too. He took some pictures from the photo album. I nod. Yeah, I told him he could. Zoe chews her lip nervously. He overheard you on the phone earlier, asked what being marked meant. What did you tell him? That mates mark each other. I pinch the bridge of my nose. He overheard me on the phone to Lucian this morning, Zoe sighs. I figured, he is sometimes too smart for his own good, that boy is. Monday 2 days later. We were running late the next morning for school drop-off, and Zoe and I both forgot it was crazy hair day. Macy reminded us when we walked out this morning and saw the kids' hairs not done, so we were currently on our way to buy some spray in hair color. Pulling up at the local grocer, Zoe ran inside before returning with electric blue hair color in a can, and one called glitter. We pulled both kids from her little yellow Volkswagen. Casey giggled excitedly as her hair was changed to blue. Valerian, however, pouted. I don't want to look like a smurf, he says. Zoe said it is the only colors they had left. It's for a good cause, it's to raise money for the children's hospital and for you kids to have fun, I tell him. What about the glitter one? Zoe asks. Valerian crosses his arm, looking at Casey dancing around the car park beside the car with her blue hair. No, it will make my hair sticky, he says. Come on, Val, just a little, I beg him. Gosh, This child was sometimes difficult. Would it kill him to be a kid for once? You will be the only kid without your hair done, Zoe tells him, and he side-eyes. Casey. Please, I ask. Fine, just one line, Valerian gives in, and Zoe draws a glitter line from the front of his head to the back. She shrugs. You could barely see it in his dark hair. Better than nothing, she says, and we count it as a win. Climbing back in the car, we head to the school. The teachers were waiting out the front hair, all done up in colorful clothes and crazy hair. The school was run down and derelict looking. Covered in graffiti, and there were only around 200 students total, and the teachers were barely educated enough to teach at it. It angered me that only 2 streets away on this side was Alpha Lucian's PAC SCH001, and across the road 3 other PAC schools, yet children of rogues were classed as undeserving of getting a proper education. The least they could allow would be actual teachers. When we enrolled the kids in school, Macy, Zoe, and I walked through, they barely had a library, had only one old computer to be shared amongst the kids. We decided to raise money for the SCH001, so for 2 weeks, half of all hotel sales and rooms fees went to the school. It was clear the PACs weren't going to help, but in a way, they did without knowing it by attending the fair we held at the hotel. We raised enough that new laptops were brought, and the library actually looked like a library, half the shelves packed with different books. Buy best-selling books online. I just had an idea on what the bonus from the Alpha meeting can be used for, I tell Zoe. I still can't believe he paid it. I point to the run-down play equipment. Macy's daughter Taylor fell off last week and broke her arm on it after falling through the bridge between the 2 platforms. Zoe smiles. Thank you, Alpha Lucian, she murmurs. Was going to ask those willing to cater for the event if they would take a double bonus for the night and the rest of the amount go towards the play equipment at the school? You know they will say yes. Look how keen they were for the fair we held. Everyone has kids that attend here. Yes, but it is also a big ask for them to put up with the alpha holes, I tell her, and she snickers. True, but they will be happy, you'll see, Zoe says, smiling. I could tell she was excited. We all got excited when it came to helping the other rogues and children. Opening the back door, I let Valerian out and peck him on the cheek, and he instantly wiped it off. What's wrong with you? I ask him and he scowls. Who were you talking to on Saturday? Valerian asks. He had been in a mood all weekend. Just the delivery people, I tell him, knowing exactly what he was referring to. He had been probing me all weekend every chance he got about his father. You're lying, you said he couldn't mark you, I heard a man's voice. Zoe said mates mark each other. Why did you say that man couldn't mark you? Is he your mate? Is it my dad? He asks and I glance at Zoe, she mouths sorry at me. No, it was a figure of speech, I lie, but his eyes narrow, reading straight through me. This kid was too observant. Is this why you have been in a bad mood? Why isn't my dad your mate? He asks. Glancing around, the teachers were pretending not to overhear. All this over some homework, I sigh, wondering if I could find a way around this. Billy said you were a rogue and that is why my dad isn't around. Billy was a little punk and him Valerian were always fighting. He said that, did he? I ask with a growl. Yep, so punched him in his ugly face, but then I thought about it what he said, and now I want to know, he demands. Okay. We can talk about this when you get home, I tell him and he glares at me. The wind will change and your face will get stuck like that? I tell him and he huffs, folding his arms across his chest. Not here, Valerian, I tell him and he looks around. Fine, but when I get home I want to know who my dad is, and why I can't see him. He frowns. I don't like them calling you and Auntie Zoe names, he adds, and I smile grimly. Well, Billy's dad is a rogue because he spat in his alpha's face, Zoe adds behind me. Valerian makes a face of disgust. See, nasty boy he is, I tell Valerian. You promise you will tell me? I sigh and look at Zoe and she frowns. I will tell you what I can, pinky promise? Pinky promise. I grab his little pinky and his mood seems to lift slightly before he turns around. Now, I had to figure out what I could tell him without giving too much away. He rushes off toward the front gate with Casey, and I see Taylor there waiting for them. Hey Auntie, Zoe, Auntie Eva, Taylor calls. Waving brightly with her broken arm in a cast. The kids had all drawn on and colored in. Hey, sweetie, can I come over swimming on the weekend? Taylor calls out to us. Of course, if you want, I will even ask your mother for a sleepover, I tell her, knowing I am off this weekend. It was the first weekend I had off in a year. The girls insisted, and I was actually looking forward to giving Zoe a break. Macy always joked we would never need a man because we had each other and was practically married with the way we handled the kids between us. Yes, Taylor fist bumps the air excitedly. Zoe waves goodbye, and I climb back in the passenger seat, missing my truck. However, on the short drive home, I drive past Alpha Lucian in his black Mercedes. The windows blacked out, but it was the only one of those cars I had seen. Pull over and turn around, I tell Zoe. She looks for a safe place to turn around and we turn back the way he was driving. When we find his car, he is already out of it, and it is parked out the front of the public library. Is that Alpha Lucian's car? Zoe asks, and I nod. No, no. Whatever you're thinking, no, Zoe says, pulling in beside it. What are you going to do? He ruined Valerie's car, so I am going to ruin his. Also, I was still pissed off about the entire schooling thing. Seeing the giant school 2 streets away that no rogue child could attend irritated me. The kids always asked what the big building was they could see from the main road. The pristine white sandstone school was erected when the first packhouse was, along with the church. The kids also weren't allowed to attend. Packs were allowed to travel freely where they wanted as long as they went by the other packs' rules while visiting the other territories. Rogue wasn't even allowed to look, let alone attend anything that wasn't on the main street or in the designated rogue areas. Getting out, Zoe squeaks. Eve, she hisses when I grab the cans of hairspray and also dig through her tiny trunk. What are you looking for? Got a screwdriver? I ask her. You scratch that car, he will lose it, not going to ruin its paint. Besides, this crap will wash off with water, I tell her. She rolls her eyes before rummaging around and passing me a tire valve remover. Why do you have that? She shrugs, looking up at the sky. I may have used it on Micah's car a few times, she mutters, and I raise an eyebrow at her. And you are trying to stop me? You're just as bad, he owed me child support, Zoe huffs. I chuckle. I was planning on stabbing the tires, but this will work even better. I set to work, and I toss Zoe the can of spray glitter, and she uses it to cover his car while also keeping a lookout. The air wheezed out of the tires quickly, and I raced to the front window and wrote on it with the blue spray dye. Alpha XX, I wrote. I quickly rush back to Zoe's car, his tires all flat, and we laugh as we drive away. We did no real damage, but it would be annoying, yet I wondered why he was at the public library. You know he will figure it out. Zoe says. Innocent until proven guilty, who else would be game enough to do that to the Blood Alpha? Zoe snickers. She had a point, no one crossed him. Stuff him, he deserves it for making our kids attend schools and for forcing me to hold the alpha meeting. He will live, and I doubt he will bat an eyelash at the cost to get it towed and fixed if he is willing to pay 50K for an alpha meeting, I tell her. Well, I think he will be demanding more than a happy ending when he sees you next for messing with his car, Zoe says, and I pull a face, having forgotten that part. Chapter 29. Lucian. I finally told Dante about Marin, and he had organized patrols to run through the reserve for me to keep an eye on the back end of her hotel. Someone had broken the fence, and I was organizing it to be fixed. Hopefully, sometime today someone would be able to go out there, or I would go myself. Dante and I had just finished at the library. We found no records of an Marin Summers from before 5 years ago, nothing by the name Marin at all. Yet even Dante said the name sounded familiar. Walking outside, we were about to head to the council chambers to look in the birth records or any records, even bank statements. Anything, but the only thing we managed to find was the hotel's data and something stating she was in the hospital almost 5 years ago. Yet didn't say what for or which part of the hospital. The lady behind the counter told us to try the Werewolf Council because she couldn't access her files for some reason either. That name sounds so familiar, Dante says, shaking his head. It's right on the tip of my tongue. I just can't, for the life of me, figure out where I have heard it. Also, don't you think it is a little odd that not even you can access her files? Yes, obviously, I tell him. She has to be hiding something. Why are there no records of an Marin or a Summers? Marin is a unique name. I don't know anyone with that name, yet it sounds familiar, Dante ponders. Dante hits the button on his key fob, the blinkers flash, signaling it was unlocked, but we both stopped in our tracks. What the hell? What happened to my car? Dante shrieks while rushing over to his beloved car. He just brought it a week ago, having liked mine so much. I press my lips in a line, glancing around for any culprits, and spot the library's security cameras that point at the car park. Alpha hole, Dante says, and I walk over to the front of his car. They have mistaken me for you. Which bastard would do this? He growls angrily. They removed your tire valves too, I point out his flattened tires. He starts shaking, fur sprouting along his arms in his anger. He spent all day yesterday polishing and cleaning it and even made me take my shoes off before I got in it this morning. When I catch him, well, you're in luck, I tell him, pointing to the cameras and cutting him off. He smiles, rubbing his hands together. Heads would roll when he catches them unless... These are mine, he growls, stomping toward the library entrance again. Yet I had a sneaking suspicion Marin's name was all over this. No one would dare touch anything belonging to me. I smile at her tenacity to try and get revenge. Chuckling to myself, I follow after Dante. I may have to stop the riot Dante would no doubt cause in his wrath. The woman at the counter smiles when we return, pushing her glasses up the bridge of her nose. You're back, Alpha, Beta. What can I help you with this time? I need to see your security footage, Dante all but growls, and the woman startles, shrinking in her seat. I gripped his shoulder, tugging him away, his aura rushed out, and a few people glanced at us nervously. May we look at the security footage, please Agatha? Someone has trashed his car out the front. Certainly Alpha, right this way, she says. Jumping down from her seat, she disappears behind the counter, and I lean over to look at her, her head barely coming to the top of her desk. How in the world does she climb onto that stool? She was so short she would barely be taller than a child, and a small one at that. Dante glares around at the people looking for the assailant. I chuckle while shaking my head before nudging him toward Agatha, who walks out from behind the counter. You're short, Agatha glares at him, and I elbow him. What? She is the perfect height for, zip it, I tell him. Well, she is, he mutters, following after her. She leads us to the back of the library and unlocks a door before pushing it open. She glares at Dante, who pretends not to see as he walks in. I will be at my desk if you need help, the password is Red Moon, she says before sticking her nose up like it would make her taller before walking away. Bet her wolf looks like a chihuahua, Dante laughs before walking over to the laptop. He types in the password before flicking through the files and pulling up today's date. He start rewinding. The security footage wasn't the best, and he stopped it when we pulled into the car park. I watch our blurry figures walk into the library, and about 5 minutes later, a little yellow Volkswagen pulls in beside his car. I instantly recognized not only the car but the blue uniform Zoe had on and the black one Marin always wears. Their faces are too fuzzy. Does it zoom in? Dante growls, hitting the button a little too hard. No need, I know who they are, I tell him with a laugh. Who? Take me to them, I will smack them into next week. Whoa, Rocky, settle down, and you really want to beat on a girl, how do you know it's a girl? That could be anyone, he says, squinting at the screen. 1 because I know the car, 2 I recognize the uniforms. Dante turns in his seat to look at me. It's my mate and her friend she lives with. She saw my car the other day. I bet she thought your car was mine, I chuckle. Your bond trashed my car, he snaps, glaring at the screen. Appears so, well, you better say something to her, or I will, he growls. Don't worry about it. I will handle it, I tell him, pulling my phone from my pocket and sending Marin a text. Lucian, where are you? It takes her a few minutes for her to reply. Marin, work, where else would I be? Lucian, didn't happen to stop by the library today, did you? Marin, no, been at work all morning, us rogues have no need for books. We aren't entitled to an education. Buy best-selling books online. I briefly wondered what the meaning of the last part of her message was, briefly. I had no doubt it was to have a dig at me about something out of my control. Lucian, next time you want to vandalize my beta's car, check for security cameras, have a very pissed off beta to deal with because of you. Marin, well, tell him I am sorry his alpha isn't. I thought it was yours. I will double check next time. Lucian, there will be a next time? Marin, depends Lucian, you are playing games with the wrong person, Marin, you won't win. Marin, 50k in my bank account says otherwise, you paid 35,000 too much, the rogue school says thank you for your considerable donation to their play equipment. Would you like mini sausage rolls and party pies to go with your frankfurts and fairy bread? Lucian, I would prefer you served on a silver platter. Think you can organize that, Marin, I prefer gold. Lucian, gold it is then. Marin, dreaming. Lucian, only of you. So, would you like to come and apologize for your misjudgment? I accept all kinds of begging, S3XUAL favors, but it could all be forgotten and forgiven for a simple mate mark? Marin, hard pass. Beta Dante should choose his friends more carefully, and his cars apparently. Beta Dante, how does she know my beta's name? I know he is in the public eye a lot, but he is never mentioned, and the rogue school? I think to myself. We had rogue schools, but why would she give them so much money? I needed to check out this rogue school her friend's kid goes to. Maybe generosity is the way to get in her good graces, but first, I must get even for my grumpy beta. I doubt me giving money away to the rogue school would be a good enough punishment for him. Why are you smiling, Lucian? What about my car? Send it for detailing, I tell him, waving him off, and Dante growls before I start dialing Richard's number. He worked at the city's police station and was usually on highway patrol. Yes, Alpha. Hey, Rich, I have a favor to ask. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.